low energy this week. It's really tough. I'm worried that, something managed to finally infect me. I'm just terrified that might have happened.
No.
But I do feel so low energy by comparison to normal this week.
Tristan.
Red boat. I need the volume on that up to about 100. Grab the theme song and theme song it up. This is the Player 4 Podcast. Join us each week as we talk about video games, entertainment, and pop culture, and bring in guests from the Rooster Teeth community. Player 4 has entered the game. Hello and welcome to the Player 4 Podcast. I'm your host, Tristan, aka Shagrazier, DM of Everybody Loves Riken.
I am Alex, aka Chaos Black 21.
I'm Malachi, aka Suki Kiwa.
And I'm Joseph, aka Jay Dunlap. Did you say episode 200?
I did. That is that number at the top of the screen this time.
We've been rambling for 200 episodes.
Thereabouts, maybe a little more, because there's a lot of things we do that don't get numbered as podcasts.
True.
So,
Ow, my ears.
Who's got the noisemakers? Yeah, somebody. Where's the vuvuzelas?
Alright, what are we talking about today?
We want to not split the parties, which was a thing that is kind of going on in two of the three campaigns. One as a matter of course, the other as a matter of decision. So thought we'd kind of touch on how, as a DM, you might go about running parties when they fractionalize and go off into different areas simultaneously, so that you don't have problems that I have, which is where you have people waiting while another group completes a task for too long. So I will start by talking, because yours is a little bit different. You don't have the problem that I was just talking about. But with Stories of the Unbound Shores, the party has come to a wayside inn as they're trying to deliver a young boy who they rescued from a destroyed village to a temple that will take care of him, since the party cannot in the long term. And on their way at this wayside inn, they found out that it's received several nightly attacks from this feral beast in the woods, and the people are in danger and unsafe. They don't know why this creature's here. They're also on a time limit with this Death Knight that they killed. They believe they have the remains of the Death Knight that will reformulate into the Death Knight after 1d4 days. So the place that they're going is at least one more day away, and it's been 1 day since they killed the thing. So, at most they've only got 2 days until this thing recombobulates. So they don't want that happening at the Wayside Inn. They'd like to have it happening in a place where there's lots of temples and clerics and paladins to be able to actually deal with that. So that's where they're taking it. But because this inn is in danger, they chose to have the majority of the party stay there to help defend it from the next time this beast attacks, since it's been regularly happening. And just two of the party members split off to go to the next the destination with the boy and the bomb, as it were, which is a day away. And the way that storytellers can handle those types of things happening in disparate locations.
Are these two party members, do they have the power to keep the Death Knight in check if it happens to revive?
Oh, absolutely
before
not.
they-
If the entire party was assembled, they wouldn't have the ability to keep the Death Knight in check. Death Knights are like CR 12 monsters, and the party's level 3.
Oh, jeez. Good luck.
Yeah, it's was designed to be one of those campaign antagonists where you're trying to figure out how to deal with this thing that's much more powerful than you. It's just we're also in like a medium magic world, so there is a prominence of magical power in certain places, and two of the characters came from a location that is they call it the DM calls it the Isle of Heaven, and it's basically a small island nation unto itself that is nothing but domains of different good and neutral gods. And so the place is just overrun with clerics. So you just go there and be like, I've got this problem, and there's going to be like 5 clerics. You're like, we know what to do.
You go into a place like, I need a cleric, and everybody comes up to you. Yes.
Yes. So I told the party, I'm like, I mean, we could always just, once we get to the Isle of Heaven, one of those clerics is going to have Magic Circle prepared. We just cast Magic Circle around this pot, and even when the Death Knight recombobulates, he's stuck inside the Magic Circle, and you just keep re-upping the Magic Circle, have a different person watch it each day until you have a way of destroying the Death Knight. The thing about Death Knights is that they can't just be killed. Like, even if you're strong enough to defeat it, it's not dead. It's like a lich. You have to find the special way of killing it. But it's much more difficult than killing a lich, because with a lich... you just have to find
The phylactery.
the phylactery and destroy the phylactery, which is an item, and usually very destructible. Sometimes there's magical protection on it, but, once until you find and destroy the phylactery, the lich doesn't stop being a problem. But once you do, the lich stops being a problem. The Death Knight, they don't have a phylactery. You actually have to, dive into who this person was in life and learn about who they were and what they did in order to defeat them and make them stop coming back as a Death Knight. That's much more involved.
That does sound more intense.
Yeah. And they're high-level monsters, so they can really wreak some havoc on a low-level party like what we've got. But figuring that we're going to a place where this can at least be handled, put on hold, hit the pause button on Doomsday there, and it's a place for the kid to be safe and raised, since this Death Knight destroyed his village and killed all of his guardians. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone that way, and only needed, 2 people to make sure that this, happened properly. So it was the paladin, and the rogue. One of the rogues is going to the island, while the rest of the party, which is the other paladin, a cleric, a sorceress, and the other rogue, are staying behind to watch the place. And so now the DM has to, away party, what do you do for 5-10 minutes, and then go back to the party that stays at the inn. Okay, here's what's happening there, kind of stuff. And you need to figure out, it's different. Every DM handles things differently. Maybe you'll do a solo session with just one party, so the other party isn't sitting around waiting. I have a DM that I play with on some Saturdays who will just, give you, one action. And be like, all right, what are you doing, that's going to be your goal that covers the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour of what your character's life is, and you get that out of the way in 2 minutes of talking, and then he switches to the next person. That's because in my Saturday games we have 4 people, and we constantly, one person goes here, one person goes there, completely split up the party around a place to gather information or accomplish different goals all at once. So he's got a he's very efficient, much more than I am, at being like, okay, what do you do? Okay, here's what happens. Okay, next, you, you, and just going through one at a time feels very Shadowrun combat like.
Mm.
And then Joseph can talk about it, but he also has a split party. But that's as a matter of course in the way that he's doing the intro games for Valanaria Chronicles.
Yes, it's the time for me to say the thing about the thing. So my very first D&D campaign was individual people getting session zeros, and then we got it to groups of 2, and then we got the group of 4 put together. That was my first group was 4 people, and then eventually 5. Well, what we're doing with Valanaria was Tristan and Derek were ready to go pretty early on. So I said, okay, let's have our session 0 be those 2 characters. It ended up being episode 1. And I introduced a bit of a plot line for them to have a conflict to overcome in a way that sort of fleshed out the characters. It's something I try to do with my introductory sessions more and more as I've tried to grow as a DM. And then I had 3 people left. So I thought, well, I know I want to put Alex and Bree together, the 2 nature lovers, and give them a fish out of water sort of experience. But I was planning on Logan, who's playing the bard, on being there. And then he told me pretty late on Thursday that he wasn't going to be able to make it. So I sort of reworked the idea that just like with Tristan and Derek, where we stopped at a certain point in the first session because we needed to, end the stream because it was getting kind of late. And we were right at the moment where they were going to start to solve the problem that they had encountered. I decided that I would do a similar thing with Bree and Alex, which is get them to a point where they know what their goal is, get them up to where they're going to start to solve the problem, and then put it on pause. And so from a cinematic approach to things, to the storytelling, you could view episodes 1 and 2 as like an introductory episode where it's either going back and if it were to edit it, you could go back and forth between group 1 and group 2, or you could do it like half of the episode is Tristan and Derek and half the episode is Bree and Alex. So I've got an interesting thing that's going to happen tomorrow. I want you to pay attention to the dates because I'm doing little Skyrim style calendar that the months are named after deities in the Greyhawk setting.
Mm-hmm.
The dates are going to be an interesting thing where I'm not actually telling a linear story to introduce the characters, but as Tristan said, it's a matter of course that we've got the group split up, but we still encounter the same issues as you would in a normal circumstance of splitting up the group. But the game is sort of designed to have a balanced group in order to accomplish anything, or to get more specific, you need a healer. So I made an accident. I had a boo-boo with how the first combat was handled, and we got around it. There was a fun story development from it. So I made sure to balance the next combat between Bree and Alex and the centipedes. Made that a little bit more doable.
Yeah, I watched that combat. It was really good. That was a good first level encounter.
Yes, I had time to think about it. What happened with your combat, Tristan, is I pulled up the monster manual. I had things going on 2 different screens, and I have a third one now. But I had things on 2 different screens, and I was trying to figure out what was going to go where. And I couldn't find an area, like an index of the monster manual, to organize things by environment, which must mean it's somewhere else in a PDF I have. And I didn't have time to look, so I thought, wolves. I'm just going to do wolves. Screw it. So I did wolves. And I ended up not having time to check how much damage they were going to do and what their 2 hit was. So I screwed the pooch on it and then just turned it into a story, like a story hook, essentially.
I mean, that happens. And we learn. And as you saw with the second first level encounter you did, you'd learned, and you made a really good first level encounter, a good intro to, especially considering that your two players had not played the game before, under this rule set. It was a very good encounter. It looked like a very good encounter to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I thought so. I thought it went really well. And there's an additional element, I guess, to throwing wolves at you and Derek when I shouldn't have as a DM, is as a storyteller, it at least demonstrates just how deadly the Badlands are.
Mm.
Whereas with the centipedes, it was just from a story standpoint, just showing that there was something happening and that they were having to deal with the fallout from it. No pun intended with bugs and fallout.
All I know is that we got thrown to the wolves, pun intended.
So, yeah, splitting the party up can be a dangerous thing unless your DM has a plan. But if if you as a party is choosing to split the group, then it's not going to go well.
Yeah, I need to. So I really kind of admire this DM. He's got a very different storytelling style than I do, which I would not try to emulate because that's his style, and I have mine that I'm pretty happy with. But one technique that I would like to emulate a little better is how he manages every scene. Basically, he comes from a very one-shot background. Everything he generally tends to do is one-shots, which is you need to make sure, very aggressively that everyone is getting their time and that things are happening in a quick manner, because you've only got the one session and you want everyone to be able to have a moment to shine and time to have fun. And so he goes and he says, all right, your 2 minutes starts now, basically. What do you do? And he runs through that as quickly as he can, and then he switches to the next person. What do you do? And it's kind of how he runs it, even when you've got multiple people in the same scene. And even though what we're doing now on Saturday is more of an extended campaign, like, even though they're connected sessions, they're still run kind of like one-shots where there's some big conflict, and if we start to get into more character chattiness, he kind of cuts us off, which is something that I don't do, because that's what I appreciate, is character chattiness. So that kind of surprised me, but it was the thing that made me realize, okay, he's very much a one-shot runner. And now, even though he's got these connected one-shots that are making a campaign, he's still running them like one-shots. So while I think that is... and I have utmost respect for him. While I think that is a little detrimental to, like, free play, to, like, really role-play your characters and get into their heads, it's really great for when you've got people splitting the party to not have people sidelined for extended periods of time waiting to do their thing next, which is an area where I do struggle. Like, I had the party split up in my most recent session, where they were dealing with a giant that magically appeared in the middle of the group, and one of the group members polymorphed it into a crab and said, okay, I've got an hour to get this thing as far away as possible. And so two of the party members ran off with the now polymorphed crab, and the rest of the party was like, well, that was weird and bizarre, and right when we woke up, we're gonna just sort of stay here and try and get our lives back in order after that, that giant just appeared and smashed the crap out of one of our party members. And so I was dealing with two party members running off out of town to deal with the crab, and the rest of the party members staying in town. And even at the time, I was aware I was, not giving it enough, causing part of the party to wait too long before I came back to them to talk to them. But then, all of that went to heck when the crab went back to being a giant, and the other party subset had to fight the giant.
The funny thing is that you've said the two things I most enjoy doing, which is trying to give equal time to each character. It's really easy at a table, which might be why you are still believing that it's something to work on, because at a table you'll notice physically which person hasn't said anything lately,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, well, what's your character doing right now? That's one of my favorite things to do, is take a cinematic approach to going between characters. But my other favorite thing to do is to not cut off in-character chatter, and to just sort of either allow the characters to just talk while I sit there, or chase whatever rabbit they want to chase.
Right.
If Bree and Alex want to go buy hats then by all means, let's buy some hats.
Yeah, and I'm very much in that second boat too, but that becomes problematic when you've got the party split already, and so now that means that there's two characters interacting in a moment by moment roleplay, and the rest of the group isn't there. I have to remind myself, okay, give them a few minutes to have this conversation, then tell them to put it on hold. They can come back to it, but I need to go talk to the other players who aren't involved in that particular scene. Otherwise, you've got them just sitting around while these two shop for hats.
Right. The moment I've got a split party, I immediately take an approach like in my head of timeline, which is why, for example, you went to the well in episode 1.
Yep.
And I was aware of what you were doing at the well as I was dealing with the paladin listening to coins clinking on the counter, which, by the way, he was hearing was what was his name? Barton. Barton was putting one coin on the counter and then got his change. And since the paladin rolled so low on his listen, he thought all he heard was just multiple coins on the counter. So I'm thinking that he thought that it costs multiple gold pieces to get a room.
Yep.
Anyway, while that was going on, I was aware of you being at the well. So then later on, there was a bit of an uncertainty about where you were, and I reassured you that you had gone to the well by then. What was I going to say? It's really important, but it's gone now, so I guess it wasn't important after all. Sure, it was a story about my Star Wars campaign.
Splitting the scene.
Yeah, it's something I've tried to do a lot, but I will also just as happily sit there and let the characters shop in character for an entire session, or shoot the breeze, or get to know a random NPC that I didn't even plan on giving a name. Like that, to me, is the most fun there is. For example, Old Gray in a campaign I was doing recently wasn't supposed to be a character, but he ended up being their favorite NPC. I told you guys about Old Gray, didn't I?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Not that
I'll
I
tell you about
recall.
Old Gray. I was doing an adventure, not really an adventure, I suppose. It was a courier mission because the characters were all low level and they were just looking for work. They needed to get paid. So I told them that a common way to get paid if you can't find a mission to like go kill things is a courier mission. So they got a parcel that needed to be delivered several days travel to the capital of the Dwarven Mountains. It was to one of the officials of the king. So they walked down the pathway all the way to Pan. They got on the river, and when they got to the river, they chartered a boat who was going to take them to the Dwarven city, which was a common thing that they do. And on the way to Stonehall, there was a mountain dwarf in the group who was looking around. Anyone have an interesting beard? Anyone have a cool beard? And I said, well, there's a hill dwarf. He's like, anyone else? Anyone actually cool? He actually talked to the hill dwarf for a little bit. Wasn't too impressed with him. His beard wasn't long enough. He wasn't even from the Dwarven Mountains. So I said, well, there's this old guy. He's got like this long, wispy gray beard, and they call him, I forgot, Old Gray. They call him Old Gray. And he said, okay, I want to meet Old Gray. And I said, well, he sits in the crow's nest, and he's got a long, like, bamboo fishing pole. You've never seen bamboo before. And he just sits up there smoking a long pipe. And they're like, this guy's so cool. So two of them go up in the crow's nest and get to know Old Gray. And he's telling them stories about his adventures when he was a cabin boy on the ocean and worked his way up to being in the crow's nest on this ship in the ocean. And all these adventures that may or may not have happened. They can't really tell. But it's like so far out there. Is he really making it up? But could it be true? And I'm like, this guy is like, if you saw him like as a homeless man next to an inn, he's probably a creepy old homeless dude. But out on the in the crow's nest with his pipe and his fishing pole and all these stories, he's actually the coolest guy you've ever met. Like, we love Old Gray. He's so awesome.
It really reminds me of a character that another DM of mine invented, and who he's now a legacy character. Always appears when we play Shadowrun. So I'm going to go off on this tangent very quickly. So anytime he runs Shadowrun, anytime I run Shadowrun, you've got a high chance of meeting this big troll in tending bar at this one like dive bar that the party often will end up going to, because it's that bar. You go there to meet with some of the less upscale Johnsons. And this bartender, he's this big troll. He's got the Siberian accent. His name is Sergey, and he has all these stories of how he saved the world. And nobody can prove or disprove these things because he's an older person, like, not old, but, like, as Shadowrunners go, he's a much older person, and he as far as anyone can tell, he's like this former Spetsnaz officer, and could have done any number of the things he talks about, and nobody's going to challenge him on it because he's huge. And the best part is just players get used to meeting with this guy, ordering drinks from him, and hearing a story on different, missions. It'll be when they go to that bar and he's not there, they're surprised, like, oh, where's Sergey? And they'll talk to the bartender that night and be like, where's Sergey? And no one knows who he is. They're like, what do you mean, who's Sergey? I'm the one who owns this bar. I tend this bar. Like, everyone pretends not to know who Sergey is. And so now people become unsure if what they saw was real. They're like, no, I know I saw this troll named Sergey. He has all these stories about saving the world. Everybody's just like, don't know what you're talking about. So he's a ghost on top of everything else.
Oh, I thought maybe he was just pretending to be a bartender.
No, he is pretending to be a bartender. He doesn't work there.
Okay, I thought I misinterpreted.
No, I meant like he's a ghost in the world.
Gotcha. So he's a ghost pretending to tend bar.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a moment in the manga and anime Cromartie High School, where the gorilla who goes to the high school, yes, you heard that right,
yeah,
ends up at a sushi restaurant and is cooking sushi, preparing sushi. And this guy walks in and sees this gorilla making sushi and has this long scene of him talking to himself about how he's not crazy. There is a gorilla making sushi, which must mean that it works there. So he concocts this entire story in his head of the gorilla's journey to get the job at the sushi restaurant and have a journey of self-discovery, and how he and the owner have come to become good friends and learn about themselves and their friendship. And at the end of that, as he's sitting down and he's going to eat the sushi, the owner of the restaurant comes in and says, "Why is there a gorilla in my restaurant?"
Turns out that whole story was wrong, and the gorilla didn't belong there after all.
The first thing I thought of was Sergey.
Yeah. No one ever shows up to kick him out, but I mean, who's going to kick out a troll?
Right, especially a ghost.
So, to our two people who are here who are players, I'd like to get better at limiting time that I spend on each side of a split group and try and get things a bit more cinematic. Does that sound good? Have you had trouble with the waiting game?
Sometimes.
I don't really hate it. It's just always trying to keep at the back of my mind the information I should and shouldn't know. Just because I can listen in on what's going on doesn't mean my character knows it.
Right.
And that's the thing that I'm just being careful on. But it's just listening to a story myself when I'm just waiting.
I think usually it's done pretty good. I will say last session probably was like the worst of it for me.
Oh.
yeah, I don't know. It's just something about the whole situation with the crab giant that I just was like, okay, is this over yet? Okay. And it's not because it was done badly. It was just, I don't know, for some reason, like that session, I was like, it seemed to go slower.
Mm. Which is, it's funny that you say that, because I think that, like, in terms of actual time spent, I think you probably spent less time waiting than you have in some other episodes for that. So I think that might also just be contributing. A contributing factor is the situation, and not part of it just not knowing what would resolve the crab giant.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, I don't know what it was, because I'm sure you're right that there's been longer times, but for some reason, last night it was just like, all right, what time is it? Oh, it's only that? Oh, okay. All right, what time is it now? Nope, it hasn't been that long. We're still going, though. This is interesting.
You were just paying more attention to this crab.
I want to hear more about this polymorphed crab.
I can tell you this. During the stint in the dungeon a year ago, yeah, it's been that long, the party picked up several cursed items that they learned very quickly were cursed, but decided the curses, while not fully understood, because Identify can only tell them bits and pieces of what the curses did, were worth it for the power boosts they got, so they took these cursed items and used them to defeat the boss. A couple players got rid of their cursed items immediately after defeating the boss with them, because they did not like the negative side effects of the cursed items. A couple people chose to keep their cursed items. One of those...
I was tuning in yesterday, and I did hear someone chewing out Alex's character for having a cursed belt.
So yeah, Riken, Alex's character, had picked up a Belt of Giants, and we just assumed that it's a Belt of Giant Strength. It did what a Belt of Giant Strength does. It gave him +2 to his strength ability score. But it also had with it a 10% chance after each long rest to spontaneously generate a random giant that would fight them to the death.
However, the Identify did not say that specifically. It said attracts giants. or is attractive to giants. It's attractive to giants. So I just figured, okay, so this basically, I just have to watch out that we don't come across any giants, because they'll like fall in love with me or something. And so let's just avoid that. No, it was completely wrong. Thanks, Kristen.
You're welcome. I thought it was funny. So he kept this item, and, like, it worked out really well, because I could not roll that 10% chance to save my life in the, like, week and a half leading up to this. And then finally they're like, okay, we're staying for 10 days, and I almost forgot. Thankfully, Alex reminded me to start rolling that 10% again, because they'd had, like, 6 sessions that were all taking part on the same day. So for 6 weeks, I wasn't rolling this check. And so he's like, oh, it's 10 days. So I started rolling the 10% chance check again, and on day 3, I rolled, like, a 7. I'm like, oh! So they wake up in this other person's house who's letting them stay in extra rooms that they have, and all of a sudden the roof of the building gets blown off as this, 15-foot tall giant just appears in the room. I thought it was really funny. And then it proceeded to beat the ever-loving crap out of Riken while he lay in his bed.
That's not good.
Nope. He survived.
After they turned it into a crab, with the polymorph spell, Riken continued to just lay in his bed, in his armor, just super stubborn. Like he was just like, screw this. I'm going back to bed.
The
Riken in
bed's
sleep, man.
destroyed. Everything's covered in Riken's blood. He's just like, nope, not gonna bother me. I'm sleeping.
I seem to recall Tam having to wake up Riken in the middle of a storm.
In the middle of in the middle of a storm.
Nothing will rattle Riken.
I think my favorite memory of that scene is that somebody shouted, Riken, get out here and help us or the whole wagon's gonna blow away. And the sword, the cursed sword that Riken, you really like cursed weapons.
Apparently.
The cursed sword that Riken had, the spirit that was inhabiting it was like, wait, if the wagon's flying, it'll be that much easier to dispense justice.
I remember the sword now.
The sword that almost got the party killed on multiple occasions.
Good
We didn't need
times.
much help, okay?
I thought it was pretty funny. Alright, that's 35 minutes of podcast.
You know, I enjoyed the new format. I enjoy being able to talk about the campaigns outside of the sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not having to have these conversations as meta conversations during the campaigns.
Yeah, I think it's good, and it gives us something to talk about that isn't, so you still locked in your house? Yup.
Exactly. So Malachi, what time is it?
He's hamming it.
He's thinking.
You can do it.
Getting the wagon flip out of here.
Flip the wagon.
So we can dispense justice.
Yeah, if we flip the wagon, we might be able to dispense justice much easier.
We can polymorph crabs and get yelled at for having a cursed item.
I mean, it is entertaining to me just how much it is always Riken who's got the cursed item that is problematic for the group. There is one other person in the group who held on to a cursed item this long, but it was a much more benign cursed item. It was armor that they couldn't take off because it would just pop right back onto their body while they were cursed, and it had like 16 AC total, but when it takes a hit, it loses a point of AC permanently, and then it takes another hit until it goes down, until their AC is reduced to 10, at which point the armor just falls apart completely, and then an hour later, the armor reforms on their body.
Huh.
So their defense goes down throughout combat until they're naked, and they just have, 10 plus dex as their AC.
Wow.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna flip out of here.
Alright, let's flip out. Hashtag Goonite.
Hashtag how did you let us go on for 200 episodes, audience?
Yeah, are you crazy?
Well, sounds mean, but no one can stop us if no one's there. Oh, but you didn't hear from me.
Alright. Good night.
I think I made Joseph sad. I'm sorry, Joseph.
Why? We
Sad
did.
trombone.